Welcome back to all of my learned magical friends out there. This episode is going to be all about magic theory. This is a subject in magic that I feel like isn't talked about often enough. A lot of times we're focused on getting the books with the tricks in it. How do we learn how to do magic? But these books are equally as important to teach you the real secrets of how to do magic. My name is Jeff Kowalk, and you are watching Erudite Magic. If you like talking about magic, but you love talking about magic books, please consider subscribing so that you don't miss any of our awesome content. In today's episode, we're going to go beyond the 5th foot. So if you haven't already, you need to watch my 5-foot Shelf of Magic series, where I talk about the books that will take you from a beginner to pretty much everything you need to know about the world of magic. Part of the parameters I set for myself, as outlined by Animan, were that the books had to be readily available, at least at the time that I published the video, and they had to be sufficient to take someone from that beginner mindset to a more advanced one. When we talk about beyond the 5th foot, all that gets thrown out. I'm setting my own rules now, and I'm saying that I can include even books that are out of print. You're going to find that we don't spend a lot of time on any one book, but instead we progress pretty quickly through them, giving you an overview of the contents of each book without getting into specifics. We've got a lot of books to cover, so let's get into this. I want to thank my friend Don over at Don's Magic and Books for sponsoring this episode of Erudite Magic. I'm talking about a lot of books that are out of print or hard to find, and Don always has a tremendous selection of books, both new and used, so you have a really good chance of finding a great deal on one of those out-of-print books that you're looking for. And if that's not enough, Don is offering all of you erudite magicians out there 10% off this week. Use code THEORY at checkout to save 10%. So be sure to check out his website, usemagic.myshopify.com, or click the link down in the description and find a book that you love and buy it for 10% off this week. Let's start off with older theory. One of the first ones that comes to mind is Magic and Showmanship by Henning Nelms. Is it just me, or do I always want to confuse those two consonants?
Nenning Helms or Henning Nelms? Whatever.
Written in 1969, this 300-plus page Dover paperback edition has stood the test of time. Nelm seems to approach the entire magic theory discussion from the standpoint of a stage performer, and he gives you a lot of things to think about, including how you should develop and present your persona to the audience, and what would make sense in the context of that persona to display to an audience. For example, he walks you through a number of different presentations, how one trick could be presented in a lot of different ways, depending on what you're trying to convey your main ability is. And while I said at the beginning of the video that this isn't about learning more tricks, he certainly does teach you a few tricks in the book by way of illustrating each of his main points. This is probably as good a time as any to let you know that I will put some links down below to these books for the ones that are still in print so that you can add them to your library collection. Magic and Showmanship retails for about $16 on Amazon and is available from Dover as a mass market paperback. Another oldie but goodie, you've heard me talk about this before, is the Fitzkee Trilogy, The Trick Brain, Magic by Misdirection, and Showmanship for Magicians, which actually happens to be my personal favorite of the three. If you're only going to pick up one of these books, I definitely recommend that it is the Showmanship for Magicians, because this is the one that I think tells you how best to present your magic and yourself. Even the back cover shares with you some notables from the world of magic and the performing arts who have found a lot of value in this book, such as Mike Caveney, David Kay, and even Steve Martin. He discusses things like holding attention, building tension, adding comedy, how you should costume yourself, colors that you should involve in your act. Basically, anything you want to know to arrest and retain an audience's attention can be found in this book. The books aren't super expensive. In fact, I think you can get all three of them for $66 or individually for around that $20 mark. So get started with one. If you like one, pick up more, but certainly there's no rush to get through all three at once. An old classic, Our Magic by Maskelyne and Devant. This one's a little bit harder to find. You can still find these used copies of the hardbound book for maybe $25 to $30. It's broken down into 3 main parts: the art in magic, the theory of magic, and then the practice of magic, which basically breaks down kind of like it sounds. The art in magic is what you think it is. It's based mostly on artistic principles, how you should conduct yourself, rehearsal, selecting things and routining, how to transition between effects, things like that. The theory of magic, or part 2 in it, is far more focused on principles. Principles of mental magic, principles of manipulation, mechanical principles, electrical principles, misdirection, and other practical things. This is one of the older ones from 1946, but so many magicians have learned the rules of magic before they learned how to break them from reading this book. So I don't think you can go wrong by studying the classics. And I guarantee you that if you ask an old-timer who's been successful, he'll probably tell you the same thing. Now that we've talked a little bit about some of the older titles, let's jump to something slightly more modern. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here because it's not a book that you might think of as a theory book. I am talking about the Vernon Touch. This book is all of the magazine articles that Di Vernon wrote for Jamy magazine during his tenure from 1968 to 1990 as one of the guest or contributing artists to the magazine. What makes this book so interesting to me is that you get the professor's thoughts kind of in a meandering sort of way. Everything I've ever heard about the professor is that he was sort of like that he meandered with his thoughts, and that whatever he happened to be thinking about, that was what he wanted to talk about and share. In the Vernon Touch, you get some really cool stories from his experiences with people coming to the Magic Castle, him going and traveling to Japan and other places in the world, his experiences with other famous magicians, and sometimes even his opinions and gossip about performers that you've only heard the names. That doesn't make it theory, however. What makes it theory is that he's sharing with you in his writing his thoughts about being natural, which most people know that was the professor's main tenet, was that magic needed to be natural. There is a little bit of repetition, and as you read it, there are some articles where you feel like there's definitely a cut and paste that he did, but like time spent with most older guys, you hear a few stories that you've heard before, but each time you still enjoy hearing it because of the source of who it's coming from and what you'll learn by hearing it again. The book can be just a little bit harder to find these days, but I think there are a lot of copies floating out there used. And certainly if you have your subscription to Jamy magazine, you have access to all of the back issues. So there's really no reason to pick up the book unless you just want all of those in one place. Speaking of legends who have left us far too soon, the other recommendation along these lines would be The Books of Wonder by Tommy Wonder and Stephen Minch. This 2-book set was out of print for a long time. It has now been picked up and republished by Penguin Magic, and they serve as both a book of theory about the art of misdirection and close-up and other thoughts from one of Magic's truly great performers, but also there are practical applications interspersed throughout with tricks of Tommy Wonder's own design. If you've never had the pleasure of being fooled by a Tommy Wonder trick, you need to watch the video I'll link to see him perform and how beautiful his magic was. Ask any magician who's read these books and they'll tell you that Tommy Wonder had a profound impact on the way they thought about their magic and what constitutes beautiful magic. He was certainly passionate, and I cannot recommend these books highly enough. They are now widely available. I'm not going to say that they're inexpensive. I think that together they'll cost you about $90 for the 2-volume set, but well worth it to read the thoughts of one of Magic's truly great performers and thinkers. Darwin Ortiz is another name that comes to mind, designing miracles as well as strong magic. He talks about all kinds of things in this book, talking about how to design an effect and what should be the focus of the performance. He discusses meaning and structure within a routine or an effect. He talks about your character and how you can design the kind of person that you want to be when you're performing, how to come up with an act and present props and themes and things like that, as well as how to interact with an audience and deal with all of the situations that arise when you're performing a moment of live theater, be it close up or on stage. I believe this book is around $40 to $50, and there are lots of used copies out there. So if you haven't read Strong Magic, I highly recommend that you do so, because even if you don't agree, and this goes for all of the books I'm discussing, at least it will engage your thinking and you will start to determine what you think about what your magic should be. even if you don't agree with the author you're reading. Jamy Ian Swiss is another contemporary name that you've probably heard. He has a trilogy called Preserving Mystery, Devious Standards, and Shattering Illusions, which are still pretty widely available, and I believe that Vanishing Ink has purchased the rights to these and republished them. I waited for a sale, but I think they'll set you back anywhere from $25 to $35 each. This may be slightly controversial, but I have to tell you the truth that when I picked up Jamy Ian Swiss's books, I did so because I wanted to read more authors with whom I thought I disagreed. Jamy is very brash with his opinions, and he's not afraid to tell you why you're wrong and he's right. And that comes through in his writing. It's hard for me to read, but I'll tell you that it made me think more carefully about my magic. Like I've been saying, even when I disagreed, it made me realize why I disagreed and start to think about how I should be processing my own theory and ideas that I wanted to convey in my magic. That's not to say that's bad writing at all. I'm just saying that I already knew I was going to disagree with him on a good number of things, but I wanted to read it because I think that's the hallmark of a truly open and growing person, is that they can read things with which they disagree and it's going to be okay. Here's one you probably haven't heard a lot about, and that is Max Howard's Creating Theatrical Magic. I have had the tremendous privilege of seeing Max Howard lecture live once at Magi Fest when he was debuting this book. Then I actually got to see his show with his partner Diane Bray, where he presents The War Wizard, which is a very theatrical magic show about a Civil War era magician performing, but it is so much more than just magic tricks. There's a beautiful story to the entire thing. It's actually included with the book as a DVD where he performs, and then he also does a breakdown of the performance and walks you through why he structured it the way he did. So this is one of those resources that's a truly hidden gem. Max is an actor, and so this book is part biography at the beginning, talking about his journey into magic and how he discovered how to put theater into magic. The second part in this book takes you through his War Wizard show, line by line, piece by piece, to explain exactly how he does the tricks, but more importantly, the words that he uses, the actions that he does. He gives you the full script on everything that he's doing. Part 3 explains how he came up with what he was going to put into that show. If you're looking for ways to try to make your magic more theatrical, and Max would say that is exactly what you need to do, I think that this is a tremendous resource to help you in that direction. And it may be one that you actually haven't heard of before. Perhaps my favorite magic theory person out there is Eugene Berger, Mastering the Art of Magic. This book is a wonderful collection of some of his previous books from the 80s, updated with his newer thinking as he looks back over the years at the things that he's learned. There's so many essays in here about how to be a better performer, rehearsal versus practice, and putting the time in, some of the tools that you can use now to become a better magician. And there are a ton of routines in it. So I know that this is supposed to be a shelf about theory, but this is one of those delightful blending books that has both magic and theory in it, from one of magic's greatest thinkers, and certainly the best voice and beard combination that I've ever seen. Wrapping up here with one of the granddaddies of all magic theory, he needs no introduction, Juan Tamariz. He has a number of books out on magic theory: The Magic Rainbow, The 5 Points in Magic, which is more theory about how to use your body, the hands, the eyes, the feet, etc., to point the audience where you need their attention to be, whether it's on you, on the magic, or away from the moment of the sleight. And of course, The Method of False Solutions of the Magic Way, that classic that he wrote so many years ago. Juan has a style all of his own, and if you read his theory, although it is practical, I would say that Juan's theory is a little bit more ethereal or esoteric. I don't know the right word, to be honest with you. He has so much joy for magic that when you read it, it is very contagious. He does give a lot of practical advice, but you're also going to read some really weird stuff from him in the magic theory. If I were to go in order of most pragmatic to least pragmatic of the 3 books that I'm mentioning here, The 5 Points in Magic, I believe, is the most pragmatic, with the most that you can put straight into your act about eye contact, body movements, etc. And part of that may be because of the size of the book. It was one of the older books that he wrote, and it is much smaller, being less than 100 pages or so. But it is eminently practical and will help you with basically your stagecraft. The Magic Way is his discussion of what makes a trick work, the solutions, both real and the ones that the audience need to imagine for them to experience that moment of magic where they're left without a clue and without being able to go back to find the solution or even a solution they think might work. Basically, you want to leave them with no other explanation other than, wow, that's incredible, that's magic. The Magic Way can be purchased for around $50, so it's also not a bad investment, and I think a really great way to get into Juan Tamariz to explore whether you want to continue down that road. The Magic Rainbow, I'm only mentioning it here. I'm not sure that I'm recommending it. I think that it is a massive book. I also think that it is the least pragmatic of all of them, in my opinion. There's just so much in here that it's hard to focus and feel like you got one thing out of it that you needed. It's also quite expensive. I want to say that it's around $150. But if you're a huge Juan Tamariz fan, you're probably going to want to read this one. I want to let you in on a little secret here. You can get the best of almost everything I've just mentioned for free. Vanishing Ink a few years ago received permission from all these authors that I've discussed here, plus so many more, to put the best essays they'd ever come up with in one book, and they got permission to offer it for free. It is over 500 pages available as a PDF or ebook download for absolutely free, and it includes specific essays from people like Tommy Wonder, Darwin Ortiz, Darren Brown, so many more people. You would be crazy not to stop watching this video and go download this right now. No, don't do that. Don't stop watching. But I want to make sure that you are aware of this resource because too often we get stuck in a habit of thinking that we have to spend money to be a magician. But in fact, there are so many free resources available to you from friends and people who care about your magic, online resources, and now something like this. If you love to read and you love great magic theory, there is a huge resource available to you for free right now from the people over at Vanishing Ink. So head on over there and download Magic in Mind and get reading. I think this episode went on for way longer than I intended for it to go, but I had a lot that I wanted to share with you about magic theory. I hope you'll read some of these artists and people who've gone before us because I think it's only by understanding where we've been that we can understand truly where we want to go. If you have other recommendations of people you like to read for magic theory, please put them down in the comments below. I will, as always, have discussions available on my Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube Erudite Magic community. So please stop by there and share your thoughts. As always, I appreciate you watching this video, liking it, sharing it with your friends, and engaging in the comments. It makes it so fun to talk about magic books together. As always, all of my erudite friends, thank you for watching, and until next time, keep reading.